How's it going, metalheads, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be discussing 5 bands that I think have 0 bad albums, which is, especially if you're a band with a lot of albums, that's a pretty cool feat. Obviously, this is subjective. Some of you guys might think that these albums are bad, some of these albums are bad, or that these bands have some bad albums, but I don't. And so, with the caveat to this being, after this video is done, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Your bands that have no bad albums for you, and maybe we'll do a part 2 of this with you guys' responses, which would be cool. But yeah, let's get into it. So the first band I'm going to be talking about, I think is pretty widely considered to have no bad albums. I don't think there's a lot of people that disagree with me on this, but it's one of the bigger ones too, and that would be Testament. Yeah, Bay Area thrash legends. I don't know what to say, guys. They consistently come out with bangers, and I think, I could have put Overkill in this situation, but I feel like Overkill has more albums than Testament. Overkill has 20 albums now. And I feel like in terms of stylistic differences, every time Testament changes what style they're doing, which, it's all rooted in thrash metal, but they've definitely gone through more stylistic changes than Overkill. I feel like Overkill has 20 albums of pure thrash metal. There's some other elements thrown in there, but the basis of it is thrash. And I feel like, while they have, I haven't listened to them all, but while they have no bad albums, in my opinion, that I've heard, I feel like a band like Testament is a way cooler pick for this spot because of, with all the stylistic changes, they nail it every single time. The only one I can think of that people generally have some gripes with is Demonic. And honestly, I feel like as a thrash band trying to go full death metal, they did a pretty decent job. Obviously, some of their thrash stuff is heavier, and I like it a lot better than Demonic, but I don't feel like that's a bad album by any means, and there's a lot of bad death metal out there, and I'd really rather listen to Demonic than any of that. But yeah, their thrash stuff kicks ass. Their newest one was awesome, had all the blackened elements and stuff like that. I know Eric Peterson's a big fan of black metal, and that's probably why those elements, have been getting filtered into their style of thrash metal, but they've also done a lot with, thrash metal and death thrash as well. They, like, Chuck really hit some lower registers, man. Like, he's really good. So I feel like, I could have put Overkill. I also could have put Exodus until, the last album. I don't hate Force of Habit as much as everybody else, but the last album is their worst, in my opinion, for me. And so I feel like Testament's a really good pick, both because, they have no bad albums, in my opinion, but also because they nail it every single time. No matter what they're setting out to do, they nail it. And I love that. I love Testament. They're phenomenal. And I have an upcoming video solely about Testament coming up soon, so keep tuned for that. But yeah, let's keep it rolling here. The next one I'm going to talk about is a death metal band that's also pretty well known. I'd say they're probably the biggest in the genre, that being Cannibal Corpse. This is one that's sort of similar to Overkill, in my opinion, is that, Cannibal Corpse has a very distinct style. They've had it since the beginning. Maybe their sound has evolved a little bit from the first couple albums in terms of getting less thrash metal oriented into more just straight up death metal. And I feel like they definitely helped, evolve the genre as a whole in that way. And so I feel like they've definitely been writing some similar songs for, a while now. But that's a really cool thing. And I feel like, obviously, I talked about Testament nailing it every time with stylistic changes. If you try to change it too much, you could alienate a lot of your fans. You might not do it well enough in the fans' eyes, and that could alienate a lot of fans. So I feel like you're either supposed to nail it every time, which Testament does, or you could stick with one thing and it works, like bands like AC/DC or Cannibal Corpse, in my opinion. I wasn't going to put AC/DC on this list because they're all the same album, and I agree with that. They sound really good, and I like AC/DC, but I'd rather put Cannibal Corpse because, while they sound, pretty similar throughout the albums, you can still tell what album is, off of what. Especially, differentiating Barnes from Corpse Grinder and all that kind of stuff. And, while they don't change it up a whole lot, there's some different elements in there. And so I definitely feel like through 16 albums, I think, is their last one. I don't think they have a bad release, honestly. And I think that's a really cool feat. There's a lot of death metal bands that fell off, either with members changing or label troubles or just, absolutely sucking. I'm looking at you, Morbid Angel. Not all of Morbid Angel, obviously, just that one album. But anyway, I think Cannibal Corpse has stayed pretty consistent throughout their entire career, and I don't think they have a bad album, so that's my number 2 pick. Now we're going to get on to some bands that, maybe people don't talk about a whole lot. This next one probably, but the last 2 I feel like don't get mentioned enough. So the next band we're going to be talking about is Warbringer. They're a newer thrash band. They were part of the thrash revival of the early 2000s, along with bands like Havoc, Evil, Bonded by Blood, all those kinds of bands. But Warbringer, I feel like they really stand out because I don't think Bonded by Blood's around anymore. Evil, I haven't listened to a whole lot of them, but I feel like their style has kind of changed. I didn't really like their last record. Who else did I talk about? Havoc. Havoc's from Denver. They're pretty awesome, but I think Warbringer trumps them in a lot of, songwriting ability and all that kind of stuff, and so that's why I like Warbrenger better. I don't think Havoc has bad albums. They also don't have many albums as Warbrenger. I feel like Warbrenger also does a thing where every time they change up styles, and while it's also still all rooted in thrash, I feel like they definitely throw a lot more elements in there, especially on the last record. The last record kicked ass, and it had a lot of different stuff that you might not expect, on a straight up like thrash revival band's album. That thing kicked ass. Weapons of Tomorrow is also great. Woe to the Vanquished. Total War, that was my first album review on this channel. I got into, part of thrash metal with that record. I just feel like they nail it every time as well, and they stay ferocious as hell throughout every album. It's just kick-ass thrash the whole way through, and I don't hate any of their albums. I like some other than, others. Some better than others is what I meant to say there. But as a whole, I don't think they have any bad albums at all, and that's a really cool thing to do. I think they should keep that up, because Warbringer kicks ass, and that's all I got to say about that. The next two, you might not hear a lot. So the next one we're going to be talking about is Skeleton Witch. Please come back, release another album. No, Skeleton Witch is super awesome. I feel like it's the perfect meeting point, like the perfect one. Like there's no complaints here between thrash metal, death metal, and black metal. It has all three of those elements, and they nail it perfectly on every album. I think they have 5, the last one being Devouring Radiant Light, which I think definitely leaned way more heavier into the black metal side of their sound versus the other 4 albums. But it was still really awesome. And while Forever Abomination, I think that's what it's called, is my favorite by them, all the records kick ass. And I do think, like I said, that they also are one of the bands who managed to, keep their sound interesting while not evolving it. And maybe that's because they are a merge of so many genres, is that's why they're able to keep it interesting. But I do think Skeleton Witch doesn't have any bad albums, and I really wish they'd come back and release another one, because Devouring Radiant Light was awesome, and I do love Skeleton Witch. So yeah, it's my number 4 band for this. These aren't ranked by like how much I like them or anything. This is just, a list of 5. 5th one, I haven't heard about talked a lot, like at all, on YouTube. They're a band I absolutely adore. I got into heavier music with them. They've been with me since the beginning. That's Legion of the Damned. They are from the Netherlands. They are, so they're like, death thrash kind of thing. So basically, you take Creator, you throw some black metal on top of it, and then you crank it up to like, 42, like just absolutely disgusting raspy vocals, like breakneck speeds, but they also got a whole lot of melody in there a lot from, the black metal elements that I mentioned and stuff. So like black and death thrash to the max. Legion of the Damned is awesome. I think their last record, Poison Chalice, I think it was called. Yeah, that sounds right. That thing kicks ass. But also albums like Descent into Chaos, their first one, Malevolent Rapture, I think kicks ass as well. But I'm going to be honest, all their albums kick ass. If you're looking for a new, lesser known, like black and death thrash kind of thing to go check out, definitely check out Legion of the Damned, because I don't think they have any bad albums. They were one of the bands that I started getting into heavier music with. At the time I was discovering Creator and Pantera, like right after those bands, I discovered Legion of the Damned. They showed me you could put all these elements into music and still have it sound great. And so then, 2023 came around and the Poison Chalice was released, and I was like enamored, because that album was like the first one where I really like latched onto a heavier band, and they released new music in the time that I was listening to them. And so I love that album. I love all their albums. I think they're all great. Definitely go check them out if you haven't heard them. I don't think they have a single bad release, to be honest with you. But yeah, that is my list of 5 bands that I don't think have any bad albums. But if you guys also have picks for this, let me know in the comments, and we might do a part 2 with your guys' picks. So with that being said, hope you're all doing well. Have a nice day. See ya.